Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Private Property Farming Podcast. And my name is Musawenkosi, a farmer based in Johannesburg. And today we're talking about forestry and timber farming. We had to bring on Musawenkosi once again. If you guys missed his first episode, which I believe we shooted, I think, late December, if I'm not correct. And he spoke about everything and anything to do with timber or forestry farming, and just basically how to go into the market, how the economy within the timber and forestry industries run, he alluded to the different off-takers that exist in the industry, and also spoke about the minimum hectares or trees that you need to plant to get a reasonable ROI. And I recall him saying that you have to plant a tree and wait for plus minus 10 to 12 years before you could harvest it or generate income. But I also do remember that in our conversation, he mentioned different ways as farmers in terms of how they could generate revenue whilst they're waiting for their trees to be harvested. And I think it was such a jam-packed show that we had to have Musa once again, because there's so many elements in our conversation that also needed more clarity for a lot of viewers that were asking questions. And I think people just wanted to know more. So it was such a successful conversation. We had to have Musawenkosi back. So once again, please like, share, subscribe on our YouTube channel, share this video on all your social media platforms. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. And thank you so much for your questions. And I hope that we are able to give enough valuable information on every single week that we are live on the podcast, so that we could just help make your farming journey much better. And so without further ado, I want to welcome Musawenkosi. How are you doing, Musawenkosi?
Greetings to you, Mbali, and your team, and the listeners as well. I am doing very well, guys. How are you doing?
We're doing okay, thank you. Lots of rain in Johannesburg. I'm not sure what the weather looks like in your end.
Oh, the weather is lovely. We're having much more rain than the previous years, and the sunshine is also good. So it's kind of balanced. Yeah, but I'm quite frankly, in Forestry, I'm actually enjoying the rain currently.
And I was going to ask that because, the farmers always need rain, and in my commodity, rain is good, but too much rain is not so good. So does the same apply with your farming?
No, there's no such thing as too much rain in forestry, unless if you still have seedlings. Now, if it's still a seedling process, yeah, then you're in a bit of a risk. But once your tree is like 1 year, 3 years old, there's no such thing as too much rain.
Wow. Does it bring a lot of pests, I suppose? I know with crops, too much rain also brings a lot of pests and diseases. Does the same also apply in forestry as well?
In some areas, yes. Fortunately for me, in my area, no. In the 6 years I've been farming, I have done no pest control, and my trees are growing healthy and well.
Wow. Talking about that pest control, and it's something I never asked, and I'm just thinking about it now, that's coming to mind. In timber farming, is there such a thing as pest control? Because, when you look at trees, like they are Mother Nature, Mother Earth, birds live there, snakes, all the different types of animals. So, like, is there such a thing called pest control in timber farming?
Yes, there is. We have something that's very common called a bad worm. It's black and forms a shell on top of wattle trees. It does eat away your leaves and makes your tree not grow very well, but doesn't make the tree die. As long as it's still there, it just eats away your leaves, so it doesn't grow very well. But once the bad worm is gone, it's gone. In some areas, they have worms. In some areas, some of the timber inside just turns white. So there's just different pests for different areas. But in my area, the most common one is the bedworm. if you have, excuse me, black wattle, excuse me, but on gum trees, no, we do no pest control.
Awesome. So, which is always friendly for the environment then, no pest control, and I suppose it cuts down your operational expenses.
Oh, it does tremendously. It's one of the things that I enjoy about being a forestry farmer, that I don't have to be doing pest control every 3 months. No.
Yeah. And do you have to fertilize trees?
Also depends on your area. But it's common that we do fertilize when we plant, during the planting phase. But then your area also determines, and your soil components also determine how much fertilizer do you put in, or do you even need any. In some areas, they need what they call hydrogel, because it's a very dry area. So when they plant the seedling, maybe needs the hydrogel just to stay a bit longer on the ground so it can grow nicely. Yeah, so it's always about which area are you in.
Okay, so let's talk about the areas. Which are the best areas that is best to grow timber? And I know it's a bit difficult because there's different varieties of trees in forestry or timber farming. But maybe if you could just maybe name a few, and just which areas are best grown for timber.
It's very simple, Mbali. Our best areas that work well with timber, it must be places that have, I would say, the area must have a lot of hills or mountains. I'm never sure the right term, and must have a lot of mist. Must be dense with mist. I'm as you all know that I'm actually based in KZN, so I know a lot of KZN areas. Your likes of Melmoth, the mist there is very dense, and if you could drive through that place, you will see a lot of timber trees there.
Mm-hmm.
Go to a common place called Howick, Underberg. You'll find a lot of trees there. You find that it's a very hilly place, and it's very dense throughout the year. There's a lot of mist going on there, so that's where it thrives. Why does such places thrive? When a tree grows, but maybe let's say the ones at the bottom of the hill, the other ones at the top. The one that's at the bottom, it actually chases the one at the top. So you get better length and a better stem size, because the longer it grows, the bigger it becomes in terms of the size of the stem. So that's where we make most of the money. So instead of the trees being about 7 or 8 meters long, becomes 30, 45 meters long sometimes.
So the trick is about getting a tree as long as possible, which
Yes.
which transfers to as much timber as possible when you harvest.
Yes, and it becomes more heavy, so you get more tons. So when you sell it something that is very heavy, because you get paid by tons. So it becomes more heavy. Also, it becomes more straight. So that means you can sell into the special market, the mining sector, the roofing sector. So so you get more tons, you get it more straight. So you will say that your tree is healthy. So you say you'll get a healthier tree if you plant it in such areas.
Right. So then, is there a specific science when it comes to planting? Because you want a tree to become more taller, more straight, so that it could give more weight in terms of ton. So when you start planting, what type of spacing do you have to have in between trees? Because I can imagine that trees need a very long root stem for them to grow over the years. So what's the type of spacing that's needed once you plant your trees?
The most common spacing, it's a 2 by 2, 2 meters apart. If you're pushing it, you can go at 1.5. Say sometimes 1.5 by 2, or sometimes 1.5 by 1.5. But it depends on your area as well. How good is your soil? Funny enough, Mbali, with our kind of trees, yes, it needs some bit of room to grow for the stems to go in. But the nice part about it, our stems go straight in. They don't go across. They don't. So they go straight in most cases. So that's what makes your tree stand. So it doesn't take space of the tree that is next door, because going penetrating straight down in most cases. But if your soils are not so good, or your soil right at the bottom it's rocky, it goes a bit on the side, but not that much.
So 2 questions, especially on the planting areas. You mentioned that it's the best areas where trees or timber can thrive in is mountainous areas or areas with a lot of hills, as well as with a lot of mist. What's the science behind that? Why specifically hills or mountains? And I'm very curious to know why the importance that mist plays in the growth of a tree.
Right. When you say mountainous areas, I said I'll go back to the other point I made. That the tree that's right at the bottom of the mountain, it actually grows longer, grows thicker, it becomes more healthier compared to other trees. So that's why we go to mountainous areas. Secondly, why we need so much mist. Actually, it's the mist that makes the tree grow better than the rain. Yes, we need the rain because it must get water into the system. But the mist, because now the mist that is so dense there, it gives in most times a bit of a drizzle. So now if there's a bit of a drizzle, that means there's water on my leaves. And if I have water on my leaves, my tree grows. I don't need much water on the ground, but I need a lot of water on top of my leaves. So if there's water on the leaves and not much on the ground, I still have enough water for my tree to grow.
Wow. So is it safe to say that your planting times are in correlation to the months where we have a lot of mist? Because you're obviously depending on a mist to sort of irrigate the trees once you start planting, or can your planting cycle happen independently from mist?
No, it's not independent. Now it goes back to, as I said to it, at a seedling level. Funny enough, the trees behave like normal crops. They need a lot of rain, a lot of sunshine. So the science now behind planting needs to be in the summertime, where you have a lot of rain and a lot of sunshine, so that it can grow. But thereafter, say year 2, year 3, you just need mist and it will continue growing. So the most common science of planting, it also applies to timber, but when you're planting at that early stage, thereafter you're fine.
Right. So you mentioned. So I suppose in the KZN regions would be best for for tree planting, for timber planting, because I'm just thinking of other hot areas. You rarely get mist.
No, you do get mist. There's a place in Mpumalanga called Piet Retief.
Yes.
Trees grow very good there. What is that other place again? But Mpumalanga, the most areas also in Mpumalanga, your Carolina. Why am I forgetting this place now? But long and short, even Mpumalanga has good areas for timber trees. Yeah. There's a lot of Sepi and Mondi in Mpumalanga.
I see. And so let's move on to mentorship, because I think that's a point we missed in our last conversation. You're in a very difficult industry, from my point of view. I try to always compare farmers to farmer operations with my operations, etc. Like, I know I'm a crop farmer, and our turnover or our harvesting cycle happens much faster. And then when I look at a livestock farmer with cattle, to be specific, you have to wait certain months before you can raise a calf and sell that cattle. And then in your case, it's even much longer. Far outweighs the citrus industry. And in your case, it's much longer. It's like 10, 12 years, like you last mentioned. And so I want to know, do you have mentors in your industry to obviously pull you through those months where, your farming operations is quite difficult? And are there mentors that you speak to, maybe collaborate with in the industry?
Unfortunately, Mbali, no. In the year 2017, 2018, I searched for a mentor. Literally, I searched for a mentor. I couldn't find one because As I say, it's a very monopolized sector. And unfortunately for us, it's still very white dominated. So they still don't want us to be into this particular industry. So the guys who have much experience are white, and the associations and them coming together as forestry farmers, they don't include, I don't even know of any meetings in my area, and unless it's really official, they have to make a public announcement. But I won't say I have a forestry farmer that is a friend. No, I don't.
So how are you growing in the industry? Like, are you just teaching yourself the ways of forestry farming? How are you doing it? Yeah.
You know what? I won't say I'm teaching myself, but you just try and ask questions here and there, get advice, call in an expert, pay them money. Currently I'm going through a process where I have to pay experts to come help me, and it's a good sum of money, instead of asking a friend or an association or what. But we do have good black guys in the industry, but they're not so close to my area. So I'll say that the more I'm practicing the forestry farming side, the more people I'm getting to know. Maybe they might be willing even to mentor me. I met two gentlemen last year that I never thought I would ever meet in my life. Fortunately for me, they are black, and they are offering as much information as they can. The one gentleman has over 30 years experience in forestry, but he's based somewhere else, called a place called Tluwe. So I'm yet to engage them further when it comes to forestry farming. So maybe someday I might lend myself a mentor somewhere. Not sure.
Yeah, let's talk about your off-takers, your clients. Aren't they the right individuals as well, maybe to connect you to the right individuals, experts aside, but maybe just farmers, because their interest will obviously to develop their farmers who will obviously enter into their supply chain. So aren't there any leads or referrals of good mentor farmers that you could get directly from your clients or off-takers?
I would say partially. Why do I say partially? Is because they call us on these official meetings where you get to meet the other farmers, where you get to engage with other farmers. But I won't say you engage that much with them. Sometimes you can say, actually, they're asking me, Musa, when are you leaving? Basically, in the long and short. They don't literally say it, but you can actually sense the environment that I'm not welcome here. So I do have a couple of guys that I try to work with, but I won't say they also, as my off-takers, offer me or even recommend mentorship, or you say, no, you have a problem with this, here's your next door neighbor. I have to find out who's the nearest to me, who's doing this, who's doing what, who's planting now and who's not planting. So it's basically, I'm just soldiering on my own thus far.
So just to clarify, no mentorships, little support from additional farmers that are obviously in your line of commodity. However, you are trying to do your best in the little way that you can to get information from clients, from experts, etc. And in essence, I think, are you learning directly from trial and error? So your knowledge and expertise is really coming from experience. Is that correct?
You are very much correct. You know what is the most sad part about this, Mbali, as we mentioned? I understand maybe the other farmers and the experts. The most unfortunate thing about being in forestry for me right now is I can't cry to my own government. For instance, they would say, in a particular region, we have 1 million to disperse. Please come apply. I'll walk in and say I'm a forestry farmer and say, don't even apply, we won't even consider you.
Why?
You are in an industry that you're not in. I don't know. Honestly, I never asked them actually why, because I think I've only asked the question of why twice. And the answer was, it's not a popular industry. There's no budget allocated. Or the other most popular answer, we don't know. We are told by the province, or we are told by the national government. And that's it. What do you say? Do I go straight to the national government and say, guys, why are you not helping me? I've been to the national government. They also say, we don't have budget for forestry.
That is so strange, because I know the name changed now, but it was Department of Agriculture, Forestries and Fisheries. So you would think that they'll have interests, throughout, whether it's commodity crops like or field crops like grain and horticulture, or fruits that have interest in livestock, interest in fish, and interest in forestry, because forestry is such a critical part still in our economy. Because you mentioned that from trees, you not only get wood, furniture, you can make, I think
charcoal.
Charcoal, yes. There's another one I'm thinking, tires. I think you said tires the other time.
No, I actually said you can try and make feed for cattle. That's what I'm busy researching on. Yes.
Yeah. So there's so many ways to process forestry or timber rather, and it's quite surprising that the reaction from government will be it's not a popular commodity, because at the end of the day it's just agriculture. But let's talk about those farmers. I mean, you mentioned the black farmers in Mpumalanga, the ones that have been farming for about 30 years. How have they survived the industry? Have they also experienced the same experience that you have had with a lack of mentorship and support from industry organizations?
I'll be lying, but if I would answer that question, because we didn't get that far in discussing forestry. The furthest we got was, I'm in need of help. This is what I need. Can you please provide? So we were still at that stage. Maybe after the provision and going through the phase that I'm going through now, then maybe I can try and get some experience. Guys, how did you go through this? How did you get this? How do you get that? Because they've been in the industry much longer. So they have to tell me their ways of doing forestry. But honestly, they're both consultants, and they're both consulting for Mondi. So they're not full-time farmers. They do farm, but not full-time. They're consultants. So sometimes the most experience they've got was through consultancy, working with the people at Mondi and Seppi, than with me doing the trial and error. I came to the industry and I came as a farmer. They came in as consultants, apprentices, and they just grew. And after growing in the professional sector, they went out into farming.
If you can, Musa, just highlight some of the challenges that you're currently experiencing now.
Honestly, my current biggest challenge, it's the financing way of farming, of forestry. Most financiers don't understand what's going on with forestry. For instance, if you've planted 70 hectares of cabbage or of spinach, after 4 months you'll harvest the whole 70 hectares. But for me, if I've planted 70 hectares of timber, I can only harvest 7 hectares, and the rest I must wait for the next year and the next. So how I turn over the amount of hectares into rands is different from you. So my type of financing can't be the same as yours. My type of interest can't be the same as yours. So I would say that is the biggest challenge I'm currently going through.
And could you say then it's also very difficult to keep the business cash positive or liquid?
It is difficult because what's putting on the strain into the business is the financiers are saying, demanding whatever they're demanding at that time. But, if things could be done well, we all understand what's going on, because my current financier has visited me more than 4 times. And they're all asking me, Musa, what do you need? And I said to them, I just need time, because my commodity takes time to grow. If you can give me time, we can make this thing work. But unfortunately for them, they can't give me that time. So, I would put it in that way, that is how these things are currently standing at this point. So I think the best way to mitigate it is us just sitting down and understanding, okay, this is what's happening in this industry. Because why are financiers not understanding or being of the same understanding that Musa's in.
Mm.
About 95% of forestry farmers, the farms were sent down as inheritance. So they were not financed. So there's so little of us that are financed. Maybe in the 5%, the another 98%, they only finance the land and not the trees. I'm one of the few who have financed the trees and the land. So it just plays a little bit of a dynamic there.
I see. And I know recently I learned of a new term called patient capital. And I think every farmer needs patient capital or financing that will be patient, because farming needs time, farming needs patience. So as difficult as you've portrayed your industry specific to timber farming, do you still have hope and aspirations to continue this timber farming, or would you be considering in diversifying to a different commodity? Because right now it seems like all the doors that you're trying to open aren't really giving you that feedback that you're needing.
Mbali, I've learned it the hard way. I have to diversify for the whole business to stand and to operate. But you know what? As you say, patience capital. If patience capital was afforded to us as farmers, I doubt I would have diversified, honestly with you. I would rather give in the space to someone else, let them do something. I believe, Mbali, we both know farmers who want to farm but don't have enough land, or they lack land. You know, if I was to call 20 people and say, guys, I have 200 hectares to dispose, have 10 hectares each, try something, start something. You know, you'll be empowering other people while you're doing your own thing. But now you are forced to use the same space so that you can satisfy financiers and whatever else that you need to do. So I actually currently I am forced to diversify given the situation I'm in. But I'll never stop being a farmer of forestry. I enjoy trees. I love trees. If I was given an opportunity to buy a farm again, I would be looking for a timber farm.
Wow. And that speaks volumes, you know. So what advice would you give, once again, to individuals who maybe have watched the first episode and are also listening to you today? And as much as you've mentioned certain challenges, you know, sometimes in challenges there are opportunities, and maybe just we don't see them as yet. So what advice would you give, firstly, to farmers who are currently farming timber and maybe are experiencing a plus or minus in the same boat as you, or aspirant farmers that want to go to the industry? And what advice would you give to industry organizations? So those are like your clients, financiers, etc., to assist timber farmers. So what advice would you give to a timber farmer or an aspirant timber farmer? And what advice would you give to organizations that have an interest in timber, whether they offtake or, basically from an off-taking perspective and financing perspective, that could help farmers grow?
Let's start with an aspiring farmer and a current forestry farmer. The best I can say, the best advice that I can give to such people is that it can work, because sometimes you feel like this thing is just not working. It can work, it will work, it does work. You know, it just, as again, it just needs time, it needs patience. If you aspire to be a timber farmer, I would strongly recommend that if you don't own trees anywhere, rather start with maybe crop farming or livestock. And as you grow, maybe plant those amount of hectares as you move on until you can get to a rotation point. But starting off all at once, Mbali, it's not going to be very easy. It's not going to be very easy. It could be very, very challenging, because you'll plant today, wait for 10 years before you have your return on investment. So it's rather that diversify through timber. You know, do whatever you have to do, diversify through timber. If you remember, I think to our 2019 AFOSA meeting, there was a lady in Pietermaritzburg who was doing cabbage, spinach, and forestry. If you remember, it was a young lady, I've just forgot her name, but she's doing it in Pietermaritzburg. Do you still remember?
No, I don't. I don't.
Just go back to that. Maybe you should enjoy an interview with her. She's very insightful. We had a very lovely conversation through when we were having lunch in 2019. So she has diversified. So there are times where she gets her money from the cabbage, because with forestry, you can harvest in most cases at any time of the year. As long as it's ripe, you can just harvest. So when you know that in June I'm doing my spinach, in April I can do some timber, so it just keeps you rotating. Because this is the good part about timber. Black wattle timber gives you good money. The money is, I have to say. I went through other businesses. Before I got into farming, I was into logistics. Logistics do give good money, but not as black wattle. No. It's good money. So if you diversify that, you are gonna make a good couple of rands for yourself.
Right. And as
now, I can only express opinion to my financiers, my off-takers. I think it'll be less an advice, just to be an opinion of, can we do better in the industry of forestry? Maybe for other farmers, for them it's best currently. Maybe they've worked out the science of how to do it. But for new entries like myself, we do need patience, understanding, and be held by our hands. Like, no, here you're making a mistake, here you're doing things right. And to the finances, please, 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 try to understand our industry as best as possible. And when you do your due diligence, do it well. Don't just fly through. Forestry, do your due diligence very well. Know how to count. If that is done well, I'm telling you, Mbali, the sky is the limit.
Wow. Thank you so much, Musa, for your time. I know that you're always busy, because every time we set up this conversation, you're like 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I'll be in. So thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate your valuable insights. And you've also given me a broader understanding to say that, you know, yes, farming is difficult, but there actually are other commodities within farming that just make it so much more difficult. And at the end of the day, it also shows that, you know, it's true when they say the entrepreneurship life or an entrepreneur's journey is quite a lonely one, because you find yourself starting a business, employing individuals, you're supporting others, but sometimes it doesn't mean that you as the entrepreneur will always be supported. And I can see that is the case for you. So there are some people that I'm going to connect with you offline, because you've mentioned that you would like to obviously engage with other timber farmers. And as you were speaking, I thought of one who I met at an Agri Leadership Academy that I was part of last year. So, and he's actually in the KZN region. So I really hope that the conversations will be fruitful, and it's about farmers just supporting each other. So also thank you for openly and honestly sharing your experiences, the challenges, because, you know, sometimes people think farming is glorious. They might see Mbali's farm on social media and think, wow, this is so easy. They might see Musa's farm in things that you're posting on your social media platforms, and they think, wow, I want to be a timber farmer one day. But oftentimes we never post the challenges. We never discuss the challenges or the hurdles that we really have to go through to get to a successful harvest, a successful business at the end of the day. So thank you so much, and yeah, we'll be in touch, and all the best with this year.
Vali, thank you so much again to you and your team. To the listeners, thank you so much. please do connect me with other guys that you might be having the privilege to know of. Farming gets really, really times. It's one business that just separates you from a lot of people. You're out of town, you're out of friends, you're just isolated. I was telling another friend, Johannesburg offers a lot of opportunities. I was saying to him that if maybe I stayed in Johannesburg and farmed in KZN, maybe I would know more farmers, more off takes. I think because you're in Johannesburg, you get to know a lot of people more than I do. So please do connect me with other forestry farmers, and let's see how we can support one another and make a success out of our industry.
Wow, thank you so much, Musa. Well, there you have it. That was Musawenkosi Kubheka, a forestry farmer based in KZN. He alluded to some of the challenges that he's currently facing in his forestry enterprise as a farmer. And he's been farming for 6 years. And you'd think by now that 6 years into the industry, he might have a good foundation. He might be running his business as a well-oiled machine. However, it just goes to show that in farming, you do receive some challenges. In farming, we need capital that will obviously sustain our businesses through times and in the years where we're not harvesting. And especially in the case of forestry or timber, it takes many, many years for you to start harvesting. And so I think he highlighted the important roles that finances need to play in the industry, most importantly, government, especially from the Department of Agriculture. It's important that extension officers, government officials also look at all the different spectrums of farming, all the different commodities, because at the end of the day, we all contribute to agriculture. We are all farmers. And there's so many products and services that come out from timber farming. And so if you have any questions, you could link up with Musawenkosi. If you have any people that you'd like to refer to him, please link up with Musawenkosi. And if you've missed his first video, which was very, very insightful, he gave you all the insights about forestry farming, timber farming, the different tons that you could get in a specific hectare, the amount of rands that you could get per ton, the different off-takers, how the industry operates. And so do your research. As I always say, if you want to go into farming, do your research. And if you're still a farmer and you're trying to grow your business, always do your research, because we can never stop learning. You might have a specific challenge today that you think you've overcome, and in the next 2 years, you encounter different challenge, totally different to what you had before in the previous years, and you may be needing help. So do your research to get ahead, learn as much as you can. And so thank you so much for watching. And please join us on Thursday with the Farming Podcast, where I will have another guest speaking about something different as well. So watch our social media channels or pages in terms of what type of topic we're going to be discussing. And lastly, please do support the other podcasts that we have with Private Property. We have Zama on a daily basis with her Private Property Live podcast, and she comes on air at 7 o'clock. And then we have SD on Wednesday, where she talks about everything and anything to do with buying a home first time. So please support our podcast. And on the weekend, we have Chad, who also gives us an insight to the different show houses, etc. So please support our programs and our channels. And all the lives are on the YouTube Private Property page. So if you miss any of those episodes, that's where you'll find us. But thank you so much for now. Take care and good night.